Thank you for staying with us. Now let's move our focus from fishing and smashing and smishing, you know, all those things. Let's move the focus to the hospital now. Let's move it to orthopedic medicine.
But even that is fishing.
Is it fishing?
Yes, because they have to fish for whatever the problem is and then they take it out. Surgeons.
The poor surgeon in the studio is perplexed. Challenges of power generation, old infrastructure, fluctuating foreign exchange rates, and lack of specialist doctors, nurses, and other health workers due to brain drain are some of the problems facing public health facilities in Nigeria today. The National Orthopaedic Hospital, Igbobi, is a tertiary health institution established on December 6th, 1945. Yes, it's that old. To provide orthopedic, traumatology, and burns, plastic and reconstructive surgical services to all Nigerians and neighboring countries in one of the facilities having these challenges. It's my pleasure to welcome the consultant orthopedic surgeon, head clinical services at the National Orthopaedic Hospital, Igbobi, Dr. Oluwaseyi Idowu.
Good morning, ma'am. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
For a moment, I mistook orthopedic surgeon for orthopediatrician. I thought that should be the... Forgive me, I didn't know.
So what are orthopedics?
Okay, so orthopedics has to do with the treatment of any deformity or disease of the skeletal system. As you can see, it's quite broad. Bone, muscles, tendons, ligaments.
Oh, tendons.
So anything that affects the musculoskeletal system, you may find out that it falls within the purview of orthopedics itself.
Muscles?
Yeah, muscles, tendons, ligaments, anything that composes the musculoskeletal system that makes you move and function. Things that, any derangement of that may require orthopedic intervention. That could be surgery, it could be other forms of therapy. That's where it's necessary.
There have been huge advances in orthopedics in recent times. Can you just highlight a few of the major ones for us?
Okay, so it's very interesting. I mean, it is an area of medicine that's got a long history, more than 100 years. Modern orthopedics as its practice, I'll say a lot of it evolved.
The Blade Runner.
Oh, right. So you remember that, the gentleman from South Africa. Okay. Now, the modern orthopedics has evolved rapidly, I'll say, in the last 60 years or thereabout. And what has changed is the subspecialty focus in orthopedics itself. So gone are the days where one orthopedic surgeon is treating all the whole body problems, but people have now gone to train in different parts. There are people who fix just joints and they look after joint problems, like in a field called arthroplasty. The people who, some of my colleagues who do small mini keyhole surgery, they put camera and they're able to fix problems in various parts of the body. There's arthroscopy and sports medicine at this days. The orthopedic surgeons who are focused on children, just like you were asking, maybe that's what you meant by orthopediatrician.
But I don't know,
there are orthopedic surgeons who are just focused on diseases of children's skeletal problems. So everyone, some sort of devotes more time to it to learn that and get it better. Of course, you can have bone and joint cancers as well. So not that all those areas of specialties have gradually evolved to make sure that the treatment is optimal.
Well, what would you say, Dr. Idowu, that is 15 years before Nigeria's independence, we've had Igbobi Hospital. I mean, that's definitely something. But what would you say over the years, or maybe a generation or every decade, would be the most prevalent orthopedic cases we have had in the country?
So, as you know, we have problems with our roads. So, trauma is a major burden in this environment. So, trauma, I would say, still accounts for a large portion of the diseases we see. Trauma and its complications.
What do you mean by trauma?
So, trauma means anything that can cause injury to the body. And of course, your whole body can be involved depending on the extent of the injury. So, you can sustain various sort of injuries, complex injuries that affect people from especially road traffic accidents, which appears to be the most common mechanism of injury that we see locally in Nigeria.
So trauma is the main thing, or is the...
So that is a common mode of presentation. But of course, we're not immune to other diseases of the skeleton. So you still have problems with growing children. Children are prone to infection. Older people, for some other reasons, are prone to bone infection. So when you get bone infection, then it's a big challenge to treat. You've got to go to the right place to get it eradicated. Even that is difficult.
Is that what you all call osteoporosis?
That is actually osteomyelitis.
Osteomyelitis,
Yes.
okay.
Osteoporosis is when you have demineralization of the bone. Bone quality is not adequate for various reasons. It's more common in the older age group, in the elderly people, for some factors, as you say.
So then, since you have chosen to go there, you've spoken about the bone. The bone is not as it should be. How does a human ensure that the quality of bones in his body is up to scratch?
Okay, first and foremost, there are risk factors for developing osteoporosis. One of those risk factors is a certain age group, women who are postmenopausal, because you lose some hormones who are supposed to that usually build up the bone at a certain age in one's lifetime. There's a decline in that, and then you're more predisposed to that. As you grow older, all of us, even in men, you tend to lose the quality of the bone. So there are things that you could do. You could make sure you don't have a sedentary lifestyle. Of course, good diet, as it is. A good exposure to the sun.
What do you mean by good diet?
Good diet rich in vitamins and calcium and minerals. So for people who eat a lot of meals that are rich, maybe seafood, for instance, or you drink milk or you eat egg, those are good sources of calcium, for instance. So at least you've taken care of a balanced diet as it is. Some people are still predisposed to it in spite of having good diets. That's because you're having problems with absorption of the minerals itself. Of course, what you do in that case is for people to get checked out properly. There are investigations that we tend to do to ascertain the quality of the bone. It's something called a DEXA scan, and it shows the picture. It tells you whether you're below the cutoff, the optimal level, or whether you're where you should be. And of course, there are a lot of things that your doctor can advise depending on what is the cause of the osteoporosis.
You know, doctor, we might be undulating between your hospital and the issues that you treat, because
Yes.
I mean, one way or the other, we're trying to celebrate the fact that the National Orthopaedic Hospital in Lagos has been on for how many years now?
77 years.
77 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite something. You know, but that's not to say that there haven't been, of course, I mean, over the years there's been expansion, scope of services have expanded, and as you have mentioned, some specialties or specializations here and there in the industry. How well kitted then would you say the National Orthopaedic Hospital is to handle some of these issues? Some of them we may discuss, some of them we'll not get to today.
Okay, in terms of being well catered, I think without being mincing words, it's probably still one of the most equipped centers in the country in terms of taking care of orthopedics, orthopedic problem as it is. I mean, there are a few other major centers in the country, and there are private hospitals that have sprung up now who are dedicated to the treatment of orthopedic problem. But in terms of how well equipped, I think in terms of manpower, we've had a lot of manpower, people who have gone abroad to train. The training program in the country itself has improved a great deal in the last, I'll say, 20 years. I can say that it's probably almost at par in terms of training that you get, and if you go abroad anyway. The real challenge, as we know, is a challenge of the country itself. Funding issues, of course, late presentations. People don't tend to come when they should, and it makes the treatment more difficult, makes it more complex compared to...
When you say funding issues,
yes.
What are you talking about?
So, as you know, the hospital is owned by the federal government of Nigeria, and as you know, kudos to this particular government. In actual fact, the capital release has improved, I think, in the last, I'll say about 6-7 years compared to previous government. But there is still a lot of gap in the funding that is required to develop the capacity. If you compare how much hospitals like Igbobi would probably get if they were, located somewhere in the West, for instance, you see that we're still far below what we should have. What happens is that you can't, there are lots of projects that you want to bring up to improve the outcome that you can't actually accomplish over time. One of the things that's different in other places is a lot of private sector involvement. You get a lot of endowment. People actually, rich people come and they just look at the hospital and say, look, what can I do for you? And I can do this for you over this certain number of years, which has, done a lot for
Is that to say, Dr. Idowu, that the need for the national orthopedic or orthopedic medicine, the services of orthopedic medicine is not appreciated, or it's not out there enough for people to see or know?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not appreciated. I think it's just that it's not enough. We're a country of 200 million people plus estimates. And if you look at, one of the things you mentioned is the number of manpower itself. So can the number of people trained cope with the demand of the populace? Nigeria probably has, at the last time on the list of the Nigerian Orthopedic Association, maybe we have about 400 or less than 500 qualified orthopedic surgeons in Nigeria.
400, let's say 450?
Let's say 450
Okay.
for a population of 200 million.
200 million people.
And I'll just,
how many cases, on the average, would you say your industry has to handle in a year?
well, I won't put a figure to it, but how you appreciate the gravity of what the Nigerian doctor has to do is that for United States, for instance, that has a population maybe slightly more than us, 300 billion, has over 20,000 orthopedic surgeons. So 20,000 orthopedic surgeons coping with 300 billion. And if you look at the ratio in Nigeria, just about 500 people coping with 200 million, then it's quite a huge deficit in terms of the manpower.
Is it that it is not a popular field of study for doctors to specialize in?
It is quite popular, but you need to know that there are quite a number of Nigerian professionals who live abroad, even when they finish training. Every year, people migrate abroad. So long as you have
Doctors,
migrating, you're never going to have enough people to cope with the demand of our populace anyway. So
this is part, I assume that this is part of the funding issues you talked about.
Everything reverberates their efforts. I mean, if the drive, I would say the practice and the support at home is better, then maybe a lot of people would stay anyway, but it's a personal choice.
How do you put it out there that this hospital is there and requires help, so such that corporate bodies can now come in and offer their hand?
Okay, so thanks. We have a medical social service a unit in the hospital. We also have our own corporate affairs department, and kudos to them. They've done a lot in terms of reaching out to philanthropists out there. I don't want to mention name, but we have some regular philanthropists who've been very grateful to. I'm not sure I'm allowed to mention their names, but you do have Nigerians who in actual fact just walk in and they try to do a lot, but it's still not enough. Scratching the
because
surface.
I mean, part of what my colleague is talking about is around the image of the National Orthopedic Hospital. You forgive me for saying that. I mean, you look outside the facade, if I can use the term, of the National Orthopedic Hospital, that there are those who are wondering, is it still functional? Not that it is not functional, actively functional, which I'm aware of, but the look and feel of it. I mean, when you look at it on the outside, it's something that many people, might wonder, if it looks like this on the outside, what kind of service am I going to get on the inside? That's not to, say that the professionals are not doing excellently well. So are these issues known or unknown to the Federal Ministry of Health?
Well, I don't know what you mean by not too attractive. When was the last time you were at the gate, for instance?
Well,
what I notice about Nigerians is that and it is a culture with us. Whereas in some other parts of the world, people actually drive into hospital and they drive around and look around. People run away from hospitals in this country. So a lot of people just move on the corridor road and zoom off. Well, I don't want to look at
See,
it.
the point I'm making is, if it looks good, you're even curious.
No, I think it's more of a cultural thing that you don't want to go into hospital.
Nobody wants to go into
I think it has improved, if you ask me, in the last, I would say, at least I can tell you about 15 years history. People who are senior to me, older to me, will probably tell you a longer history. Of course, there are lots of challenges in the country itself. So you look at our roads, you look at Lagos-Ibadan Expressway has been ongoing for 13 years. So everything reflects on the country, on the hospital itself. When the funding is not, like I keep telling you, not as huge. Even when you project and you think that this is what the hospital should be doing in 10 years, 15 years, you have to just manage what you have been appropriated, what the appropriation that has come from the owners of the hospital, which is the federal government of Nigeria. So, but that's not to say that there's a lot of improvement, and I would encourage everyone once in a while to just pop in and look around.
Okay, if I can, what are some of those risks that you can say that Nigerians take that makes their orthopedic health? Is that such a thing?
Orthopedic health, yes.
If they are orthopedic or whatever, their bones and muscle system, what are the things that we do to ourselves as Nigerians that put us in jeopardy?
Okay,
whether we know it or not.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. First thing is, of course, I don't know whether it's just our own within our control, our roads, and observing the traffic regulations, such that you drive down the incidence of accidents. And even when accidents happen, for instance, if you're wearing a seat belt, you get less injured. Those things are meant to be protected. So those kind of culturally, driving well on our roads to reduce accidents, I think that is number one. Number two is that when it does happen, go to the right center. We still have a lot of problem with unorthodox practices, and a lot of the burden of what we see in our orthopedic practice in Nigeria are complications from unorthodox care. There are set guidelines that have been tried and tested all over the world in terms of taking care of the bone. When you have bone infection, it's devastating. It's very difficult to treat as it is. So you don't want to get that if you have an accident, for instance. So.
Yeah, since you brought up the issue of unorthodox treatment before they come to you guys, I mean, my mind just went to somebody has a sprain, a fracture, and they'll go to an EJOB person to do some work on it before they come to you. I mean, have you found in some cases that unorthodox treatments has actually helped? Do they help in any way?
Okay, the way I would answer this question is...
I'm not trying to railroad you.
No, I know, I understand you. We get asked all the time. So if you have a broken finger, and if anyone keeps it straight, just splint it with anything, it's likely to heal if it doesn't move out of position. But if you have a broken finger that has moved out of position, that is not a simple fracture, then it's not likely to heal unless you straighten it out properly and then find a good means to make sure that it's splinted. So in that case, the normal splint that just like a cardboard, for instance, may not work anymore. And you then have to do maybe complex surgeries like using pins to hold it and watch until it's healed in that position. So the question about it's a tradition. It's something that they've done over the years. But don't forget that even the Europeans started that way more than 200 years ago until things became refined and all that. And of course, if the what I say to some of my patients when they come is that if the German was so good, sorry, with all due respect, why are you here? That's one. And two is, why haven't they gone to somewhere in America or somewhere? That's so good that I've imported them so that somebody is refining that for them. So it's something that it has become a mainstream all over the world. It's so standard of treatment. Things have been well standardized as it is. So
could it also be the fear of one going to the hospital, as you said, or even the fear of the cost?
The cost. Yes.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Cost is forever going to be an issue until we sort out our national insurance properly, so that the coverage is very broad. It's ridiculous that people have to start looking for money at the point that you're incapacitated. It's an irony, isn't it? Because you can't even do anything to get the money, so that cost is an issue.
Okay. Yeah. So, by way of guiding, one thing that we've been doing on this program from the beginning of this month is to try to guide people to live right and do right, so that they don't jeopardize their health in the name of celebration. But there are those who are saying, by the way, that the celebration is going to be toned down now this year with the cost of a bag of rice. But if you're to give counsel, and you already spoke to it, maybe perhaps before you go there, you talked about the need to eat right to protect your bones and your muscles, to strengthen your bones and your muscles. What are the things that are our lifestyles, our ways of life and living, maybe at work, on the roads, or even at home, that jeopardize our skeletal system?
Our orthopedic health.
Our orthopedic health. Okay. I didn't know it was a thing, but now that I know.
So first, a lot of the patients that we also get, that has to do with diseases of the spine. That's the vertebral column.
Isn't that so enclosed in that column?
Yes, it is. But people can get a lot of people will suffer from back pain from time to time. So
the way we use our cell phones,
exactly, and it has to do with the way you sit, appropriate posture. Don't sit for too long. We tend to say to people, if you're sitting for about an hour, you need to walk around, straighten out. And the same thing, you don't try to lift weights inappropriately, so you don't sprain or strain your back as it is. The kind of job that you do, you also have to...
Sorry, my apologies. Can you describe how people should lift stuff? Isn't it just to bend down and take it?
It's bad to try and lift stuff when you're bending your back and you're putting all the strain on your spine, on the spine as it is. What people do a lot of heavy lifting and need to undergo what is called manual lifting training, so that you can actually try to bend your knee a bit, so you relieve your back of some of that strain when you're trying to lift a hefty object.
So, forgive me, and I hope I won't get in trouble with my producer. So if I want to lift anything now, I
don't bend straight.
I don't do this.
So try and kneel at the same. Exactly.
Like this. So I want to pick this back, for instance.
That's a lot. That is a lot more protective of your back as it is.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not sure that many people listening to us now would
do that. Well, we just taught them something this morning.
Let's hope the lesson is taken. So that's one way we jeopardize it, right?
That's one way. I mean, and a good exercise. A lot of us, because we're caught in the kind of job that we do, you sit in a place for too long. Of course, you're predisposed to obesity. You're gaining weight. With that, you're going to develop all sorts of diseases. You put a lot of pressure on your joints. And of course, you can develop all the problems that are related to obesity. Excessive alcohol consumption has a lot of impact on your bone. Smoking can lead to osteoporosis.
What is excessive?
Right, so usually the doctors recommend, if you're going to drink at all, you shouldn't take more than 2 units a day. And 2 units
what is 2 units?
So 2 units. The way I assess 2 units is a bottle of beer a day. Or a glass of wine, as it is.
Not more than 1 bottle of beer.
A day.
Beer parlor guys, are you listening?
And of course.
We're out of time.
And of course, good diet, like we mentioned earlier.
Well, we have learned quite a bit this morning.
Especially for those who are going to be traveling.
Well, it's Christmas season, so when you go out of town, do be careful and sip that beer slowly so that you don't end up taking more than one bottle. One bottle. So says the orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Oluwaseyi Idowu, consultant orthopedic surgeon, head clinical services, National Orthopedic Hospital, Igbobi, Lagos. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Educating us this morning.
Thanks a lot.
Literally.
So we'll be right back with another interesting conversation. Please join us after this time.